Your brain burns through energy faster than almost any organ in your body, and after 50, that energy system starts running on fumes. There's a molecule sitting in the supplement aisle right now, priced like an afterthought, that new research shows can recharge your brain's power grid almost as powerfully as it recharges your muscles. And no, you don't need to be lifting weights to benefit from it. If you've written off creatine as something for 25-year-olds trying to bulk up at the gym, I want to challenge that assumption today, because the science on creatine and the aging brain has quietly become one of the most compelling stories in longevity medicine. Let's start with what creatine actually does. Every cell in your body runs on a molecule called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Think of it as the battery that powers every function your cells perform, from muscle contraction to memory formation. But cells can't store much ATP at once. They need a rapid recharging system, and that's where creatine comes in. It works with an enzyme system to regenerate ATP quickly, especially in tissues that demand enormous, fast bursts of energy. Your muscles are one of those tissues, but here's what most people don't realize. Your brain is another. In fact, gram for gram, your brain may be even more energy hungry than your muscles. It's about 2% of your body weight, yet it consumes roughly 20% of your resting energy. And as we move through our 50s, 60s, and 70s, something concerning happens. Brain energy metabolism starts to decline. Mitochondria, the tiny power plants inside your neurons, become less efficient. This isn't a moral failing or a sign you're getting old in some vague sense. It's a measurable physiological shift in cellular energy production. And it's one of the quiet drivers behind brain fog, slower processing speed, and the memory lapses so many of my patients describe as feeling like their brain is running through mud. This is where creatine starts to look less like a bodybuilding supplement and more like a resilience tool for your neurons. Your brain actually stores its own reserve of creatine, precisely because it needs that rapid energy buffering system just like your muscles do. And when researchers have looked at what happens with creatine, particularly in people over 50, the results point toward meaningful support for cognitive resilience. Let's get into the actual data because I don't want you taking my word for it. A number of controlled trials have looked at creatine supplementation and cognitive performance, particularly in tasks involving short-term memory and reasoning under fatigue or stress. One well-cited study found that older adults who supplemented with creatine showed improvements in memory and processing tasks compared to those on placebo. Other research has focused on a specific and very relatable scenario: what happens to your brain when it's under-resourced. This includes conditions like sleep deprivation, mental fatigue, or the kind of oxygen-restricted state your brain experiences when blood flow is compromised, which becomes more common as we age. In these depleted states, creatine supplementation has shown a buffering effect, essentially giving the brain a backup energy reserve to draw from when its normal systems are under strain. There's also emerging interest in creatine's role for people managing traumatic brain injury recovery and in populations with naturally lower creatine stores, such as vegetarians and vegans, who often show the most dramatic cognitive improvements with supplementation, simply because they're starting from a lower baseline. Now, I want to be very clear about the state of the science here. This is a promising and growing area of research, not a settled, slam-dunk cure for cognitive decline. The studies on creatine and brain health are smaller and less numerous than the decades of research on creatine and muscle performance. But the biological mechanism is sound, the safety profile is excellent, and for a molecule this inexpensive, the risk-to-benefit ratio is one of the more favorable ones I discuss on this channel. So let's talk about why this matters for the thing you actually care about, which isn't a number on a cognitive test. It's staying sharp enough to manage your own finances, drive safely, remember your grandchildren's names without that flash of panic, and stay independent in your own home for as long as possible. Cognitive decline isn't just a memory issue, it's one of the biggest threats to aging in place. Because the moment cognitive function drops enough to compromise judgment or safety, independence becomes a much harder conversation. Supporting your brain's energy metabolism isn't vanity, it's infrastructure maintenance for the life you want to keep living on your own terms. There's also a second layer here that connects directly to physical independence, the muscle-brain link. Sarcopenia, the age-related loss of muscle mass, is one of the strongest predictors of falls, hospitalizations, and loss of independence in older adults. Creatine's most well-established benefit is still its ability to support lean muscle mass and strength when combined with resistance training. So when you take creatine and pair it with even modest strength work, you may be simultaneously supporting the muscular system that keeps you upright and mobile, and the cellular energy system that keeps your brain sharp. That's a systemic, whole-body approach to resilience, not a one-symptom fix. Now let's talk practically. because I know some of you are wondering about cost and complexity. Creatine monohydrate is one of the most extensively studied and inexpensive supplements available. You do not need a fancy branded version, a flavored powder, or an expensive advanced formula. Plain creatine monohydrate, the kind that's been used in hundreds of clinical trials, is widely available and typically costs just a few cents per day. This is not a situation where you need to spend more to get a better result. In fact, if your budget doesn't allow for supplementation at all right now, know that your body does produce some creatine naturally, and you can support your levels through whole foods like red meat and fish, which are the richest natural dietary sources. It won't match supplemental doses, but it's a meaningful, no-cost starting point. If you do choose to supplement, the doses used in most of the research I mentioned are modest, generally in the range of 3 to 5 grams daily, taken consistently. There's no need for a loading phase like bodybuilders sometimes use. Consistency matters more than timing. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. Your brain's ability to stay sharp isn't just about doing crossword puzzles or taking a multivitamin and hoping for the best. It's about giving your cells, including your neurons, the raw materials they need to keep their energy systems running efficiently. Creatine is one of the most well-researched, low-cost, low-risk tools available for supporting that cellular energy system, both in your muscles and, increasingly, the evidence suggests, in your brain. If you want a simple next step, here it is. Consider whether creatine monohydrate makes sense for you, particularly if you're noticing brain fog, fatigue, or you're already doing resistance training and want to maximize that investment. Pair it, if you're able, with even 2 short strength sessions a week, because the muscle-brain connection is where the real resilience compounds. And if supplementation isn't accessible to you right now, prioritize those whole food sources and know that you're still moving in the right direction. Longevity isn't about chasing every new trend that crosses your feed. It's about identifying the small, well-evidenced, low-cost interventions that support your body's systems as a whole, so you can stay independent, stay sharp, and stay exactly where you want to be, in your own home, on your own terms, for as many years as possible. If this gave you a new way of thinking about brain health after 50, subscribe, because next week I'm breaking down the other overlooked mineral most adults over 50 are quietly deficient in, and what it's doing to your cardiovascular resilience.